Whiskey Jason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American over here in Germany, proud as Oscar. Why? Because this bottle here has my logo on it. This is a private cask from a German distiller called St Kilian that I actually just had filled up. Yay! So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the process of owning your own cask from the viewpoint of an American over here in Germany and tell you about some of the important things you have to consider if you want to do this. Now, all this information does not refer to the United States of America. It might actually be correct for Ireland or the UK, but it's all about my personal experience in Germany, working with a German distillery at this moment, okay? So, now, if you go to www.stkiliansdistillers.com, you will actually have the possibility to change the language to English, and then you can actually go up there and say private cask. And this is what I did basically. So back in 2019, this bottle was actually then the cask that I bought was filled. I bought this, by the way, in when was it? Actually, I bought it in 2020, so almost a year later. So I already bought a virgin oak cask, which I've actually filled and refilled the cask. I had a Amarone cask, and I have a rum cask with St Kilian, and this is the ex-Rum cask. So this was cask number 3563. It says on the label here, ex-Rum molasses. Very, very good. And it was filled with 63.5% ABV. Now, the cask was 27 liters. And then it was then bottled on, wait a second, it's August, the 25th of August, 2022. So it's 3.5 years old. This is a 0.5 liter bottle. There was a total of 43 bottles here, and there was a total of alcohol volume 54.6. So the 63.5 went down to 54.6. Now, what happens if you want to buy a cask in Germany and you are German? Let's just assume that for the moment. So there's basically 6 steps, and they say, if you want to secure your own piece of German whiskey history, please have a request without any obligations. Click here. So what you first of all do is you let St Kilian order casks. So what we do is, what is an ex-rum cask? An ex-rum cask is an ex-bourbon barrel, and usually 200 liters. So these ex-bourbon barrels are sent over to Scotland, Ireland, and down in the Caribbean, or to South America, where they are used for Scotch, Irish whiskey, and rum as well. By the way, almost all the tequila casks, ex-bourbon cask, okay? So our rule of just one use, is good. So what they do is they take a 200-liter cask, and they have a cooperage. I think in Germany, actually, that actually reduces that 200-liter cask down to a 30-liter cask. So you can take the staves, cut them in half, put them back together again, and it's much, much smaller. Why, do you ask? Well, the maturation is much quicker in a smaller cask than a large cask. Now imagine I had a sherry butt, and I put 500 liters into it and let it set for 10 years. The surface to liquid ratio in that sherry butt is very, there's a lot less surface than liquid, compared to, let's say, a 30-liter cask. That 30-liter cask, now let's do the math real quick. Imagine that I had, wow, I'm not good at doing the math at all today. So 500 divided by 30, you would have actually, let's say you have 16 and a half casks, all 30 liters. There's much, much more wood touching that liquid, that same amount of liquid, as in one cask. Does that actually make sense? Yes. And also you have much higher angel share because of those little smaller casks. So the wood influence is much, much higher. The interaction with the wood is much, much more, as well as the angel share is higher. So you get a more rapid maturation. If it's better, don't know, but it's more rapid. All right, so St Kilian gets a certain amount of casks every year. So they just order them, the cooperage makes them, they have them there. And then what we have to do is we have to actually fill in a form. We have to have an order form, and we order our whiskey. So you have the choice between virgin oak casks, either American or European oak. I did that once with American oak. Nope, don't do that again, Jason. You can have a bourbon cask, very, very good, or at the moment you can have a sherry cask. I had the opportunity to have Amarona. I had the opportunity to have rum. They've had some special things in the past. This was actually something that St Kilian did at the very beginning, when they were starting out to have capital, have cash flow, have a little bit of capital coming in, and so on, which is great, which is wonderful. That was good for the start of the company. Today, their main focus is no longer on those private casks. If you're going to do a private cask, try to get in at the very beginning. My rule of thumb is I do not buy a cask unless liquid has flown from the stills. I've had cask programs offered to me, especially from Ireland, 20 different places. I'm going to say 10 of those places will never be built. And they have my money. When do I get it back? When they're not going to, it's a mess. My rule of thumb, as soon as liquid flows, I can become part of the founders edition there. I love that. That's great. But I'm not going to do it. If the building is being built, maybe I might do it. But my rule of thumb is wait until liquid flows. If I miss out once or twice, I'm not going to die. All right, have enough casks. I think there's 15 different casks I have at the moment in Ireland, Scotland, Germany, that pay one more or one less is not going to really harm me in any case. Would I always love to be at the beginning, be one of those founding fathers? Of course. But as I said, I'm a more cautious person with these cask programs. Good. I select on my sheet here, my order form, what is the type of cask I want. Let's say you go for sherry. Then here you have to actually pick then between a peated new make and an unpeated new make. My plan is to actually, of my 3 casks, the first one for 3 years, it's going to be unpeated. I'm going to refill them again for 4 years, unpeated, and then I'm going to refill them the 3rd time with peated whiskey for 5 years. Because the more often you use a cask, the less active they are. So I think a peated whiskey in an Amarona cask for 5 years, even though it's small, is good. And I still have the chance. I'm there at least once a year at the distillery. Try it and go, oh, it's ready. Bottle it. I don't have to wait the 5 years. I might be wrong with my assumption, but so far I've been pretty good with what I'm done. All right, so you send in the order form, they send back the invoice, you pay the invoice, and then they fill your barrel. All right, it's always going to be filled at this distillery with 63.5. Other places do higher, lower, whatever they want to do. There is no rule here for the exact ABV. All right, good. And then what do you get to do? You get to wait. What do I mean wait? In this case, you wait 3 years at least. All right, so they have a bonded warehouse at the distillery. They have a special section of that bonded warehouse where they have all those private casks. Many of the casks have actually paid a little bit extra money to have their name on the cask, on the head of the cask. So one of mine had WhiskyJason and Friends. That was great. Others I said, I don't care. All right, so some distilleries allow you to visit the cask. Some actually allow you to try once a year a little bit from the cask, not too much, but to try to see if it's ready or not. Some places will actually send you cask samples. I have one cask in Germany. Once a year they send me a sample. And it's like, okay, not yet, not yet, not yet. I think I'm going to need a finish with this one. That's the way things are sometimes. All right, and so, and then you have to wait. Now, at the beginning, at this distillery, I pay for everything at the beginning. I pay for the cask. So in this case, with this one, I paid almost 2,150 euros for the cask, for 3 years of maturation, for insurance, for the distillate, for the excise tax, for the VAT, and also for the labeling. All right, so those are the things I basically paid for at the very beginning, and after 3 years, I get the bottles. But before that, there are certain steps we have to go through. Now, some places, most of my other casks actually say, hey, pay for the cask, pay for the new make, pay for the insurance, pay for the storage, and then when you bottle it, you pay for the alcohol tax, excise tax, you pay the VAT, you pay for the bottling, you pay for the labels, you pay for the shipping. And we'll have 2 separate things. And often that second part costs almost or exactly as much as the first part. So if I buy a cask in Ireland, let's say for €3,500, by the time it makes it to Germany, I'm going to pay another €3,500, ballpark figure here, on excise taxes, on VAT, on shipping, on bottles, on labels, on everything else that is there. That's just one of the rules of thumb. Usually it's a bit less, but it's not a bad rule of thumb, to be honest. All right, so you've waited your 3 years. In this case with St Kilian, what I was able to do, I'm allowed to do, and everyone else has a private cask, is design a label. So I don't know if you can see this label or not here. You can see WhiskyJason and friends, and you see the names of the people who actually were cask owners with me or participated in my cask share. I'm the only owner. They have a license certificate that said they have the right to receive one portion of the cask, which in this case was going to be 3 bottles each. So we had Arna, we had Basil, Felix, Ursula, Sascha, Torsten, Timo, Stefan, Enrico, Marcos, Matthias, and Jason, of course. And I've been using this label now for the last 3 times. It's just the system that I developed, and people really love seeing their name on a label. It's just like, Jason, you don't know how proud I am. And I remember the first time I had my first bottling with my first logo on it. It was like, I'm so proud. And I have a bottling at the moment from from Peerless, that's a single barrel with WhiskyJason logo, and I picked it and so on. And it is a moment of pride in your life. So in this case, after the labels have been approved, not by the government does not approve labels over here in Germany. They will contact you and they may fine you if the labels are not conforming to the rules and regulations, but they do not approve a label. So, and we have 2 labels. We have the private cask selection label and we have the legal label. So on the legal label, we need to have the lot number, we need to have ABV, we need to have the cask. We don't need, but it's good to have actually then the date it was bottled or distilled and bottled and what type of cask it was. And this is a single malt German whiskey here. So after all that's finished, the question is, how do I get my bottles? I paid for everything. I paid for that 3 years ago. Now, how do I get the bottles? Now, the thing is, for example, in my case, we actually, for the first 2 bottlings that I did of my private casks, we actually went to the distillery with 10 people, got a tour, had a little party, opened the bottles. Many people stayed overnight and had a hotel and partied and just celebrated the fact that they were part of a single cask bottling. Great. In this case, the people were like, well, we have whiskey fairs again. It's no longer COVID. No. Could you just send us the bottles? So I was in the lucky position that I was at a whiskey fair where the distillery was also there, and they just gave me my bottles before we were building up the booths and so on. And so then I sent off the bottles to each and every person. Ta-da! And now I'm refilling the cask. I paid €2,100 for the cask and the liquid the first time. The second time, I'm only paying €1,650. So the cask apparently has a value of about €400. And that's, think about it, 2 years later, inflation and so on, still a fairly good price. Now, let's talk about money. I will taste this in a second, believe me. Now, what did this bottle cost? The people that were part of the cask share. They basically paid €50 per bottle. They had 3 bottles, so they paid €150 up front. Now, the thing that I'm going to mention here is this is a lot of trust. They do get a certificate that said they are the owner of a share of a cask. Now, 2 things could have really gone wrong. First thing, I could have died. Yeah, I have a friend, he offers over here in Germany cask shares that have a life that will be filled up in 18 years from now. I do not know if I'm going to be alive in 18 years or not. I mean, just statistically, I'm 70 by that time. All right, so it's no longer car crash. It's no longer something that's a real possibility. The guy doing it is 10 years younger than me, so I guess that will work out. But it's actually it's a risk you have to think about. All right, so it's trust. So imagine I died, and then my son, who is responsible for actually doing everything if I die, he's informed, but he still needs to have a death certificate. He needs to have my will and testament, whatever. He needs to have that, a power of attorney to go to the distilleries and say, hey, now I'm the new owner, hey, and then he just needs to contact everyone, have all that address, have all that work out just fine. That is something that could have gone wrong. The second thing that could have gone wrong is that imagine this happens a lot more than we actually think, and it's going to happen a lot more in the next couple of years, I think. A distillery is sold, or the distillery goes bankrupt. What happens to my cask there? Officially, it's insured. Officially, nothing should happen to it. But, yeah, my cask, I have a cask at Annandale. Imagine someone comes in, buys Annandale, and I come in 3 or 4 or 5 years. I think it was an 8-year contract I had with a cask. Hey, I want to pick up my cask. Oh, we're no longer part of the European Union. We no longer honor these contracts. That cask has already been sold off to someone in China who paid much, much more for it. Here's a little bit of money for your troubles, if I get the money at all. And then I have another 10, 15 people behind me that are like, well, Jason, where are our bottles? I want my bottles. I don't want the same amount of money I paid 8 years ago. This is trust. This is a little bit of a risk that we have to remember that could be there. All right. So, of course, I could sue the new company, and of course I could. But by the time something really happens and the cask is already gone, no. And that's the reason why I do not personally recommend ever using casks, private casks in this manner to be a investment opportunity. It's an opportunity for passion. It's an opportunity to have a personal label on a bottle and so on. It's a wonderful, wonderful experience to go to a distillery and have your cask, the patent, have a picture and so on, and fill it up and have this. But to see this as an investment possibility and say, hey, I'm getting 25% return per year on my cask, yay. Well, maybe not in 5 years, 10 years, 12, 18 years. Who knows? All right, so I'm not a supporter of cask trading. I'm not a supporter of investing in casks just for the money. I am someone, though, that loves having that bottle in their hand after the cask has been bottled. All right, so let's do one little comparison. Now, everyone out there has practically known something about batch variations. Yeah, so Glendronach 12 this year tastes different than Glendronach 10 years ago. Duh. Of course it does. Now, have you heard of barrel variations? Now, what I have here, and this is something that actually should not happen, but happened to me once and apparently happened again with this one, is the way normal people do a single cask bottling is that normally you empty the barrel. The question is, into what? The first time I was there, they forgot about me with my single cask. And so he said, hey, Jason, here's a hand pump. Here's the bottles. Fill. The label's already finished here. We just forgot that you were coming this week. We thought it was going to be in 2 weeks from now. Here, fill up your own bottles. I was like, this is cool. So of the 52, I think, bottles we had, I filled them all up together with my partners that were there at that moment, or the cask owners together with me. And what we noticed was the last two, and especially the last bottle, was extremely oaky. Now think of a coffee mug, think of a tea mug, and that little bit at the bottom where that residue and that little bit is all there, that is going to be oakier than the first bottles. Now, what happens is normally you would empty many, many casks. They would come into a vatting container and they would settle maybe even just for an hour or so, and then you would fill them up into the bottles. Yes, but what happens with single casks? Do we use those same vatting tanks? No, they're too big. So what do? Do we often just kind of empty it and fill it up and so on? In this case, this is 43 bottles. This is so small, this batch, that they actually do it by hand. And so there's a variation between the first bottles and the last bottle. And this was what it says here. It just says on the here, Jason, it's not 42 bottles. There were not total, there's 42 and a half. So it's a rest. It's a rest bottle, the rest of a bottle. And so, what happens with our single cask when it doesn't perfectly add up to a whole bottle and it's cask strength? Who gets that? I've had so many single barrels in my life, and I've really never thought about, oh, that's interesting. What happens with the rest of the not completely filled bottle? In this case, I got it, which I think I'm very, very thankful for, but other people didn't. So if I try this and I try that, I've actually just tried this in my German video. This is perfectly balanced. This is over oaked. It's the same freaking barrel. There's barrel variations or bottle variations of a single barrel if you don't do it correctly. I did not do it correctly the first time. Now, the first ones that I did, actually, there was barrel char in the bottle. There is no barrel char here. All right, so they did filter it a little bit. I didn't even filter it. We were dumping it literally with a funnel into the last. It's a 30-liter bottle. You can barrel. You can pick it up. You can do that. So we were actually just dumping that last little bit into that last bottle, and it was very, very, very oaky. All right, so that's also something you don't think about unless you have those mini batches. And if you're working with a micro distillery, a local distillery, and they are doing things like that, ask them, how do they do the single barrels? What do they do with the rest of the not yet full single barrel bottle? And also, how do they avoid that batch variations in there? They just had a container. It would have been, hey, this is our plastic tote. It's 50 liters. We pour everything in there through a filter. If you know, if it's a very, very, very not non-chilled filter, but a grate, a very, very thin, so that none of the particles of the cask get through there. Not getting rid of any of the fatty acids or anything like that. No chill filtration here, but just a little bit, and then let it set, and then actually fill up all your bottles and see if there's any little bit of yeah, I'm going to call it the residue at the bottom of the tank anyways. So this is a 3.5-year-old full maturation in ex-Rum cask, 27 liters. I love the nose. It's very, very sweet. It's like molasses. Over here, there is a recognizable oakiness that's more. It's really, really interesting. This was sweeter, this was oakier. The same barrel. It just blows my mind. Hmm. Hmm. 3.5 years, in my personal opinion, seems to be perfect. I was planning for 3, got a little bit busy, went up to 3.5 by the time everything was finished. This is, that molasses moment is there. The 56.4, 40, the 54.6, beautifully integrated, no water needed. There's a rum sweetness going on here, but a darker sweet moment. It's like a dark rum. Like the molasses moment there. Well done. Going over here to this one. There's a significant amount of oak more. There's a, it just pulls the saliva out of my cheeks, astringency. There's an oakiness here that's more. This was well balanced. This was a little bit off. I have a good image of what the bottle would have been like if I'd left it for 4 years, maybe even 4.5. No, thank you. I think this is absolutely perfection here. Very, very well done. So these bottles, as I said, cost 50 euros when you buy them. Now you pick them up 3 years later. They go. They sell them at the distillery. They have some of their own, 69.99. So 70 euros. So it's 20 euros per bottle you save if you actually then buy it now. Is it worth it? I would say yes. As an enthusiast, as a fan of the distillery, as someone who actually loves having their own name and logo on the bottle. Other people just buy whiskey. Ralphie, for example, he does the transformation. He actually puts he toasts his own little twigs, put it into the Glenfarclas 105 and let it change, and he watches it. If you want to do transformation, go ahead. I'm not the fan, at least I've never been, and I don't think I ever will be, of transformation and transforming whiskey with your own casks. I'm someone who actually buys casks and learns by doing that way and finding out, oh, that's what it tastes like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 year. And that path, that experience, that knowledge that I'm getting because of that in a real life situation is for me just a fabulous, fabulous moment. Watching a whiskey go from new make to watching a new make go to whiskey is just a magical course of time. All right, so now all this information was valid for Germany. Different countries, different rules. All these YouTubers, for example, have been doing store picks. Why store picks? Because they personally cannot sell or buy casks. They need to work with a store that does it. You need to have a license in America to actually buy whiskey and sell whiskey. Over here in Europe, I am a businessman. I am allowed to sell alcohol, but a private individual could also do a cask share. You do not need a special license. You as a private individual can say, hey, I'm going to have my 50th birthday in 3 years, 4 years from now. I'm going to buy a cask now, and I'm going to give myself this birthday present when I turn 50. And the label will say, Jason's 50th birthday present. And we can actually hand out bottles or a company anniversary or things like that. All those things are allowed over here. You don't have to be a licensed company to actually purchase a cask from a distillery in Europe. You still have to pay your excise tax, which the distillery does for you. You still have to pay the sales tax on it. You have to have them bottled by them. But everything else, you get the bottles, and you can do with them what you want. And that's the last thing. Do you really want 40 to 50 bottles of the same thing? What are you going to do with them? If you have a store, no problem. You can sell them. If you have a birthday celebration, you can give them away. But do you really want to be giving away a bottle of whiskey at every event in your life? Or is it something that you go, hey, we're 5 different friends. We each get 10 bottles. We can get rid of those. Or we can get 8 bottles. That's something we can do. That's something I would recommend. So that's that. All right, WhiskyJason, that's small barrels. That's 30-liter barrels. And imagine if you had a 200-liter bottle, 200-liter cask, how many bottles would you get out of that? These are 0.5-liter bottles, by the way, not 0.7 or 0.75. So thank you very much for watching me. I'm very, very proud owner of this cask that I've refilled and these bottles, and I think it's an excellent, excellent possibility to share your passion with others. So, WhiskyJason here. Maybe you can write down in the comments your personal opinion about cask ownership in Europe and or America or any place else in the world. Is that something for you, or is it something you should steer away from in your opinion? Thank you very much. Like, subscribe, tell others. All the best. Bye-bye.